Start. And happy Friday to everyone. I'm Tony Lynch. I'm the host of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And today we got another great episode for you guys. And of course, before we get started, I want to say that this is for educational purposes only. If you guys are out there struggling, please, we have resources for you guys so you don't have to do this alone. Now, before we get started, I would like to say if this is your first time tuning in, head on over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. And if you know anyone who can benefit from these conversations that we have, please share this with them. Now, without further ado, we have another amazing guest for you guys. And today we're talking about a very, very deep and profound subject. And you guys already know we're talking about child loss. We got the one and only Shirley Thiessen here, and she's going to be bringing some different perceptions to the table. So without further ado, Shirley, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Tony. Thanks for this opportunity.
Yes, of course. Tell people where you're from, and well, introduce yourself. Tell people who you are and where you're from.
Sure. Well, I'm Shirley Thiessen from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I'm married to my husband, Carey, for nearly 40 years. I'm a grief educator, a coach, because I am obsessed with the fact that no one should have to grieve alone.
I love that. And that's something that we always preach to those who are going through the losses that they do, is that we want to walk with them and let them know that, hey, you're not by yourself out here in this world. And you know just as well as I do, grief can be a very isolating, very lonely journey. And there's a reason why people say that. It's because grief is a very individual thing, right? Everybody's going to look at a loss. And we talked about this before. And it's amazing that you did that show with your daughter, to get that different perception, right? And so now let's talk about your journey before leading up into how you got into the work that you're doing now.
Well, I'd love to invite you into my story starting in the year 2012. So at the beginning of that year, my son Jordan and his younger sister Chantel were both students at the same university, not in our city, another province. And as that year began, I just knew that it was going to be a significant year of milestones for my son. And sure enough, in January, he proposed to his girlfriend, Elise. We were so excited to add another family member. And then in April, they graduated from university, just a huge milestone. Then after a nationwide search in June, he landed a career job in our city. We were so excited that they'd be living nearby. October, that same year, Jordan was married. We celebrated this new life of him being a husband and all that would unfold. Well, just 12 days after that wedding, we were down in California on vacation, my husband and I. And we were, that particular day, October 18th, I wanted to go to the store to buy one item for my kitchen condo. I wanted to make it a quick trip, just in and out. So as I walk into this department store, I'm quickly distracted by a rack of summer dresses, like on clearance. Forgetting that I was in a hurry, I went over to have a quick look, and there was a black dress that I was particularly attracted to. I admired the fabric, the design, but it wasn't my size. I didn't need a dress. I put it back. But as I started to walk away, I heard these words. I want you to buy that black dress. You are going to a funeral. Well, my head whipped around to see, like, who said that? There were people in the store, but no one was near me. Confused, I continued to walk away, but this time I could read the words in my head like a news ticker. Before I knew it, I'm in the change room, standing in front of this full-length mirror, wearing the dress. It fit so well, it felt so comfortable. But my rational thought was this. I don't know anyone who has recently died. Like, I have no funeral to attend. Besides, I already have a black dress in my closet. What am I doing? But that message repeated, I want you to buy that black dress. You are going to a funeral. I bought the dress, unsure to whose funeral I was meant to wear it. Well, just a couple hours after that shopping trip, there was a California police officer at the door of our condo. Within a few seconds, my worst nightmare became a reality. Our 23-year-old son, Jordan, just married 12 days, had been killed in a workplace accident. It took me a few minutes to connect the dots, like that black dress, the one I just purchased. Well, now I knew to whose funeral I was meant to wear it. My son's funeral. And I sobbed in disbelief. But the thought that came to my mind was a verse in Deuteronomy 31:8 that says, "The Lord himself goes before you, and he will be with you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged." And right then, I realized that this black dress was a gift from God. And it gave me confidence to give a 23-minute tribute to my son on my darkest day, my son's funeral. And that is how I came into this whole grief journey that I could have never anticipated.
No. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. There's nothing more painful than losing a child, right? And the reason why I say that, because we often feel as if once these things happen, and I know for me, even now, I always feel it as if things are out of place, right?
Yes.
I was just talking about this with someone. I was like, there feels as if there's two realities that I live in, and I can't figure out which one it is from time to time, right? It's like an interweaving thing. Like in one sense, it's like I'm here, I'm present. But in the second sense, it's as if the fabric of time has been torn apart and put back together and interweaving with it, because you don't want to believe what has happened. Right? There's a sense of disbelief that comes along with that. Like even now for me, I still look at I just caught myself looking at the phone thinking that someone's going to call me to tell me come pick up my son, right, from school. And I know in the reality that I'm in, I know that it's not going to happen, right?
Right.
But it just feels as if things are out of place. And so I pose this question to you: do you ever feel that way? And if so, what is it? How would you explain it?
Yeah, definitely. It's out of order. Child loss is out of order. I never anticipated having to bury a child.
Right.
In fact, only a few months before Jordan died, I'm a bit of a control freak. And so I had told him what I want for my funeral. I had written it down, and, this is the food I wanted. This is the songs I wanted. And he had this twinkle in his eye and he goes, "Mom, you'll be dead. We can do whatever we want." And he just knew how to press my buttons, right? And so, I thought I was being so wise and just sharing about what I wanted in the future, thinking it's still a long ways away, but, son, I want you to know what I want. And never thinking that I should ask him what he would want. But as you said, there is this time warp in grief. And I also feel that because my son now lives in heaven and my daughter lives here on earth, in fact, in my city, I feel like I'm in both places. Okay. It's an odd feeling, but heaven feels so much closer because I have a loved one there. But I'm also trying to be very present to my family here because I need to be in both places. It's just, I don't even know how I can really explain that, but my love can cover both.
Yeah. No, I think you did a pretty good job by saying that, you're in both places, because I often feel that way. I'm here present, but there's a part of me that walks with my family members who have gone, right? And it's through what most people would call intuition, so to speak. The silent conversations that you have inside of here that comes from here, right? But they often guide you through this world, right? They say, "Hey, I need you to step over this way. Hey, I need you to stop. I need you to have this conversation." those things like that, I'm very in tune with it. And for the longest time, I never understood why, right? Because there has been times where throughout my grief journey after my mother passed away, that I would sit down and go, Mother, what am I supposed to do now? Father, where am I supposed to go? Right? What is my next steps? And you hear that it used to be a mixture of voices when I would say that. And I would say that was my mother and my father talking to me, saying, hey, son, I just need you to breathe right now. Don't worry. Everything will make sense. But right now, don't rush. Don't rush going in either which direction. Be right here. And it was such a comforting way of that it just calmed me down. I was like, okay, and I knew everything was going to be okay. Or having conversations with grandmother, right? There's been many, many times where I was sitting around and I was saying, hey, I'm going to cook this meal, right? Now it's just me. It's just me. And I go, Grandma, I really wish you was here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I do know I'm going to cook this meal. And Grandma would be like, baby, first you got to throw some seasonings in there, right? You know what I'm saying? And we're going to mix it all in together. So this is the way she used to talk to me when I was younger, when she was teaching me how to cook. And I get into the little groove, got some music going on and, do my thing. And it'll turn out, I'm like, well, Grandma, I think you'd be pretty proud of your grandboy, or your grandbaby. Baby, I'm already proud of you.
That's awesome.
Things like that, right? And my son, there's times where, example, you ever see the sky when it's like pinkish gray on a nice summer night? Things like that, right? You ever gaze up at it and think to yourself, like, wow, that's a pretty sky, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last conversation I had with my son, similar situation, was sitting outside looking up at the sky. It was pinkish. And he goes, Daddy, look, it's like the Powerpuff thing going on. I said, baby, that's the angels up there cooking cupcakes. And he turns around with these big old eyes. He goes, I want some cupcakes too. So it's things like that, although it feels out of place. Thinking about it, child loss and things like that, it also reminds me that there's nothing that says that we're exempt from it neither, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we touched on this before. It's perception versus reality. Perception, we perceive these things to be out of order. When parents pass away, we're like, oh, that's just the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
Siblings, depending on how old they are, right? We kind of feel kind of back and forth on it, children, when we outlive our children, we're like, that's not the way it's supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it gives a different sense of either bitterness, anger, confusion, shame, guilt, because then those things play in factor because we worry about what people look at us as. They go, wow, maybe, and we assume they don't want to talk to us, right? You know what I'm saying? They may be afraid that some of this may rub off on them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Share your what do you think about that? What would be your insights on it? I would love to hear that.
Well, first of all, Tony, tell me the name of your son.
Jake
Jake.
Steinbrecher. Yeah, he has Jake Sepple Steinbrecher.
What a beautiful name.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely think that some people are very uncomfortable with grief, and you're right. Sometimes when we lose a loved one, we find out, especially a child. I mean, that's a parent's worst nightmare, is losing a child. And so I know even in my own friendship circles, there are people that stepped away from a friendship with us because it felt too scary. Like if child loss could happen in your family, wow, it can happen anywhere. It could happen in my family.
Right.
And so it does put fear into some folks in a way that you suddenly realize your social circles have changed because of this loss. And that was an additional layer to grief I hadn't anticipated. But I've come to realize that's a reality. And I can't be bitter, upset about it. It just is. And so you need to let some of that go.
It's very true. And I'm glad that you said that because it posed the question to me. Well, the thought, you know, how quick it was to take things personal,
Mm,
right? Especially with those that we care about, things like that, and they walk away from us in the hardest moments, right? And these may be people that we've known for years, may
right.
have known the relationship that we had with, our children that have passed away. Now, and because I used to think to myself, like, wow, you're just gonna dump me like I'm just some old garbage. You just threw me out in the streets.
Mm,
And then it dawned on me, after a long conversation with God, because I was angry with him. I said, why?
mhm,
I couldn't understand why he would hurt me this way, right? And as a parent and as a male, I thought to myself, like, I've done everything you asked me to do. I've been obedient to everything that you've asked me to do. Wherever you told me to go, I went. When you told me I needed to change, I changed. Whatever you asked of me, I did. Why
mm,
would you do this to me?
mhm,
The reality of it was, um, I was never exempt from it, right? See, I didn't understand in that moment that it would lead to my biggest blessings. And
mm.
once I figured it out, I look back on it now and I go, I could have did without all of that, right? You could have just gave me a book and gave me some tests. I could have tested out of this thing, right? You know what I'm saying? And he goes, no. He goes, you would have never got it. So what do you mean? But you would have never got it. See, the best lessons are things that you have to experience. And I go, well, you didn't have to take them away from me. You go, oh, let me just explain something to you, young man. He was mine before he was yours.
Yes.
Me and God, I took it personal. I was like, oh, I didn't have nothing to say, but I took it personal.
Absolutely. Well, it's a common expression of our emotions to be angry with God, to say,
Mhm.
why? Why did this happen? Why me? Why now? That is very natural and human. And I think one thing I've learned is that, taking that lament to God, bringing my pain to Him and wrestling with that instead of turning away from Him for myself has been part of the process of grieving.
Mhm.
And it has been, yeah, part of my story that has helped me come through my loss to say, okay, God, I may not agree with how this all worked out, the plan that you had. I
Mhm.
realize you're sovereign, but it is what it is. But now
Yeah.
I need your help to recycle this pain
Mhm.
for a good purpose. And I believe that is why I'm in grief education, why you're doing what you're doing. Like, we're finding that purpose, that good purpose for our pain so that we can help others.
Yeah. Before we get into the work that you do, I do have to ask this because you was married. You're still married, right?
Yeah.
So how did that impact your relationship, your marriage? Because coming from a male's point of view, I often see the side of the male, and and often when I do sit with women, they ask those questions. If they have to, I explain it to them like, this is what you're seeing, right? Perception is reality. The reality of it is this gentleman is hurt, but your perception of what you're seeing is that this person is emotional. But the reality of it is that he's doing the best that he can. He's expressing his emotions in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to know how to read what's going on and being able to show up in those moments and understand that this is this is the reality of it. So I asked you, how was that? How was the relationship, and how did you see your husband um,
Mm-hmm.
during this grieving process?
Well, one of the first things that became so apparent was that we grieved completely opposite. In fact, our personalities kind of did a switch. It was really weird. So before Jordan died, I was a very private person, quite an introvert. Where my husband, we could be in a grocery line. He's an extrovert. He's oversharing with the people in the line, like where we're going for vacation, what we're having for dinner. Like he's just a very social person. When Jordan died, Carey, my husband, went quiet with his emotions and held them very close. For a long time, he couldn't even talk about Jordan unless it was just with my daughter and I. If someone brought up the subject, he would change the subject. And not because he didn't want to talk about Jordan, but he didn't maybe trust his emotions. He didn't want to have a full ugly cry in that moment. And so he would have to change the subject. And that went on for, quite a while. Whereas me, suddenly I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to tell people our story about our son. And I got very vocal to the point where I started speaking about grief. And my husband would come to support me. And I knew he was always supporting me, even though he said, don't you ever put me on a platform and make me speak. But he would come to support me, but he'd be sitting in the back crying. And he would be such a distraction that finally I would say, maybe just stay at home. But I think what we had to learn almost immediately was to give each other grace to grieve as we felt we had to grieve, recognizing that we weren't going to be copycatter grievers. Like we're going to do it different. And that's okay. The only wrong way to grieve is not to grieve, is not to allow ourselves to feel those emotions. And he had to do it very much in the privacy of the home, where I wanted to mourn openly with others, invite them into my loss and talk about it. So it was very different. So we did learn we have to give each other grace.
Wow. I love that, right? And I speak from a different perception because, I went through mine by myself, even though I did have a girlfriend at the time. And I think it was 6 months after. I think this is where the first change came, because of the words that came out of her mouth. I took very personally, and rightfully so. 6 months after my son passed away, I just remember just sitting there, and I couldn't remember what I was doing. I was just this close to openly just breaking down. And she looks at me, she goes, "It's been 6 months. You should be over it by now."
Oh no. Oh no.
Well, that was a hard pill to swallow, coming from someone that I cared about very deeply, right? And I didn't understand why I took it so personally. So you got to remember, before I got into this, I was going through the process of grieving. And there was something that felt so dangerously sharp about what she said, that I looked at her, and it was everything that I can do to not go off the deep end. And I just looked at her, and something just said, walk away. Walk away. She doesn't understand. It's not her fault. I turned around and I looked at her and I smiled. I grabbed her and kissed her on her forehead. I said, that'll be the last time that you ever say something like that to me. I get it. You don't understand. But that's the last time. And I walked away and haven't turned back since then. I now understand, even though those words, see, I saw your expression when you was like, ooh, oh my God, right? Forgiveness, grace, and patience play a factor in that.
And yet, Tony, that is exactly why I have committed my life now, especially the last 4 years, to help educate people on how to say and do things that are helpful and supportive for people who are grieving. Because it's a well-known fact that in our society, most people do not know what is helpful to do or say to support the griever. And the onus should not be on the person who has experienced the loss to educate the people. Go, you know what? That really wasn't helpful. You just actually really wounded me. I am so convinced that people are well-meaning and they want to be supportive, but we never talk about this. And that's why I'm even here with you today, because I am so grateful that you want to open up the conversation about grief and help people understand there are simple but significant things that we can do to help carry the burden of loss for someone else that
Yeah.
will make you a hero to them, a hope hero. You're lending hope, not shaming them for their tears or their sorrow. That is just so hurtful. So
Well,
that's
like yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that, and I'm humbled by that. But I tell people I'm a servant, right? I'm a servant to my father for everything that he's done to me, the blessings and the guidance that he's given me, the grace, um, and the purpose, right? He's although this part of my life has been changed, he's given me a purpose within my gift. He's helped me identify, and he's fast tracked me in a way to where I never understood why, right? But I'm okay with this now, right? I'm okay with the way that things are going because he's given me something much more on the other side, which is a different connection. And in a second sense, I'm a servant to the people that we serve, our communities, those that we come in contact with that may not be in such a great place. I want to show up and meet them where they are. So my commitment to them is that now that I understand what my gift is, I no longer can walk away from you without giving it to you because I cannot take it with me. And I was told that, hey, I owe it to you. So therefore, I'm committed to giving it to you in
mm,
those moments. Because as we both know, people will always remember the way that you make them feel. I want to say good morning to Kaya. Kaya, thank you for tuning in today. Today we're talking with an amazing Shirley Thiessen, and we're talking about child loss and a few other things that's going on with that. And so if you want to, if you got any questions or anything that you have for either myself or Miss Shirley, please put those in the comments and we'll get those answered. But if not, sit back and enjoy the conversation. And as always, appreciate you. So now when we this gift that we have of education, right? We paid an ultimate price for it.
mm,
We definitely paid an ultimate price, and when I look at you, I think to myself like, wow, what sort of strength do you have to be able to get up every day or want to get up every day and go out here and do these things, right? And I think that, by talking with you, you've identified it, right? You identified that thing. And it's a shame that it's such a awkward gift, right? The gift of grief, education, and things like that, right? It's like, who wakes up and says, I want to be educated in grief, right? Most people go, I want to be a doctor, dentist, fireman, police officer, et cetera, et cetera. We
yes.
kind of got pushed into this thing. Like, I know this may not make sense to you, but throughout all of this is going to be your biggest thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, part of my interest in this is also because I look back at the younger me and I
Mhm.
realize I was not equipped to know how to come alongside my grieving friends. And I actually shudder to think about it now. Some of the platitudes that I thought were fine to say, I thought I was being helpful, but it wasn't until those same platitudes were said to me and I'm like, whoa, that hurts, that
Yeah.
I realized, how come I didn't know? How come I didn't know how to express empathy in a way that could be received? It's because I never learned, not at school, university, in church, nowhere. And I am not okay with that continuing. We do need to learn. And I believe people want to learn. I love that people are receptive to identifying just even one or two ideas to know, how can I express empathy that expresses my care and compassion that says you are not alone.
Mm, I love that. Now let's talk about the educational part of it, because there's a lot of things that we learn on the go, on the fly, right? And I totally agree. What happens, and let me know what you think about this. A lot of times we get thrown into these situations so suddenly, right? And by us not having the conversations, because no one wants to talk about death, dying, and grief, right? But we understand, you and I, and a few other people that I've talked to, we understand the importance of having these conversations, so you know how and what I need, but also in the time of my passing, what I would like, so I can have a beautiful death, but also you don't have to worry about the next steps, which that's where our friends, the death doulas, come in, right? Because they do an important job. They're there before the transition, during, and after, to make sure that everyone is taken care of. Now, as educators, we go in and we go, hey, that anticipatory grief that you're experiencing right now, yeah, it's totally normal, right?
Mhm.
There's, these things that are going to be said to you, don't take it personal. It's because people don't understand. So we play a major role in helping people understand, but we also, another role I believe that we have is to come in before this happens. Like you say, you do speaking, right?
Mhm.
Having a conversation with people that may not have experienced that loss right now, but you're giving them and inspiring them to go and have that conversation. So it's not such an awkward thing. So when it does happen, the initial shock that you go through is not so it's not so blunt, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you can't prepare for it. There's no preparation for it, because everybody's going to experience some sort of loss, but it's going to be different types: complicated, anticipatory, disenfranchised, displaced grief, sudden, all of these different things, right?
Well, I think we need to remember that those who love will also grieve. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
pretty much covers everybody, like almost everybody, I would say, who loves will also grieve. So that means children can grieve, right?
Hmm.
Children
Hmm.
can lose a friend, a grandparent, a parent, a relative. So I believe actually we have a responsibility to educate children about loss. And while we do that, we also recognize that there's different types of losses, right? There is the loss of an opportunity. Maybe they didn't get onto the track and field team like they had trained for, or they didn't get that part in a play, or their best friend says, "Oh, I don't want to be your friend anymore." Those are significant losses that children will have. So if we can even educate children about how to navigate losses in healthy ways, then we are kind of preparing them for those major losses of death and loss of a loved one. So I have really boiled it down to 4 things I believe we can do. And I come up with an acrostic: LAP, LAPP. And so the first one is just listen. Listening in our society is a lost art. And listening really requires us to seek to understand, not just to listen so you can reply, but just seek to understand, to give people space to express their emotions without having to edit what they say with you.
Yeah.
And when a griever feels heard, a little piece of healing starts to take place. And then the A in the lap is for acknowledge the loss.
Hmm.
That's not pretending that it didn't happen. It's saying the name of the loved one who's died. Say, your life must feel so different. What do you miss most about your son today? That's acknowledging the loss. Um, I'm wearing a scarf today that my sister actually made. She made 40 of these. She calls them the Jordan Eternity Scarf after my son. And she sold them to 40 friends. And that funds went towards a scholarship in my son's name at the university he had attended, so that other students could attend the university. Well, that's
Hmm.
a beautiful way of acknowledging my loss, and it has a benefit for others. And it's remembering my son with me. I love that. Another friend, the necklace I'm wearing is a friend gave me this necklace and my son's name is engraved on it. I love that. She is saying, I want to remember your son with you. And every time you wear this necklace, I want you to know that I miss him too. Wow, what a beautiful way to acknowledge my loss.
Yeah,
And then the
yeah.
P in the acrostic is for pray. Now, I'm a woman of faith. I believe in the power of prayer. And honestly, I haven't met anyone who doesn't want to be prayed for when they're in pain. It's like, bring it on. Like, just pray. And so I believe that so much is at stake, especially when people are ambushed by pain and loss.
Yeah.
We need to pray that they'll have hope will rise in their heart, that they'll be able to move through this and not get stuck in bitterness and resentment. And then the last P is patiently be present, because grief is not a sprint. It's not over in 6 months or a year. It is a lifelong of processing or reconciling to this loss.
Mhm.
There's no end date to this. In my estimation, there's no closure. It is something that I will continue have to reconcile, that my son is no longer with me. And yes, the pain of it eases over time, but it's always there. And so I love it when my friends, here I am 12 years into my grief journey, and they continue to listen, acknowledge the loss, pray, and patiently be present with me.
I love that. I love that. I'm gonna have to put that in the description down below and break it down the way that you did, so people have that to take with them as well. Now, you said something and you touched on it. And I love that you did this. Um, Children, right? Now, being a male, I primarily just focused on the older men, right? Because I can relate to them in a different way, and I see the damage that has been done to them over years and years of compiled trauma, grief, abuse, et cetera, things that we hide from a lot of people because we don't want to risk being misjudged, um, or, I dare say it, about feeling violated when someone takes what we have gone through and uses it against us. This is the way life has taught us. So again, having those conversations and things like that, there was a lot of things to factor in. But your daughter, right? And you said something, and we talked about this. Your relationship with your daughter, and you guys actually had the chance to sit down and talk. And she's been on this journey, even though it's been individual. That was her sibling.
Right.
But now you are her mother, so you guys are seeing things from a totally different perception here, right? But you guys are sharing the same loss. So
Yes.
how was that relationship with you and her, but also what are the things that she taught you?
Well, so much. She's taught me so much that I wish I had known earlier on. But first of all, maybe just to give you some context about sibling loss that she kind of helped me understand is in my story of my son's, he had, say, 3 significant relationships with women in his life. He had his wife, who had known him for 2.5 years. So basically, out of her entire life, 10% of her life was invested in a relationship with Jordan
Yeah.
as Jordan's mom. He was born when I was 24 and he died when I was 48. So 50% of my life was invested in a relationship with him. Now, my daughter, she was born into our family. She already inherited a brother who was 2.5 years old. So 100% of her life was in a relationship with her brother. 100%. And yet when she lost her brother, people would go to her and ask my daughter Chantel, well, how's his widow doing? How are your parents doing? Rarely, very rarely did anyone ask her how she was doing. And because she was pretty stoic, she wouldn't express her emotions in public, people assumed that it really wasn't affecting her. And so that's why often siblings are the forgotten mourners. And one thing it came to my attention as she shared with me is there's some irrational fears that she had. So, and this is pretty common actually, when apparently her and Jordan had already discussed what they were going to do with their aging parents. And apparently he was going to take the lion's share of the responsibility as the oldest. And she was happy with that. Well, then Jordan dies, and she's thinking, oh no, I am all by myself to care for my aging parents. And it overwhelmed her. I had no idea until she expressed this out loud, like to strangers when I was there.
Just know how that goes.
But I also learned from her that she needed permission to grieve, which blew me away because I was thinking, you don't need permission. Of course you can grieve. But see, she was naturally a peacemaker, and she did not want to add to her dad and my sorrow by openly expressing her tears and her anguish in our presence, because she thought it would just make ours worse. It would just add to our sorrow. And so she tried to kind of dumb it down, especially when she was around us. And so she said it would have been so helpful if we had said to her, Chantal, you have permission to express your grief in front of us however you want to. Don't hold back just because you want to save our heartache. We're all in this together. So she's taught me so much.
You know, and the reason why I asked that, because I do have a younger sister, and we've just recently started to develop our relationship. You know, although we've both experienced the same losses, we've just all seen it from different perspectives, from our father to our brother to our mother. You know, and the difference that sets us apart, of course, is the one that that's the most profound, which is child loss. And so I often, she humbled me, right? She said something to me that pushed me down, and I had to bow down to her and go, look, I am so sorry. I did not know, because when my father was sick, I came back to Colorado, and she was there when he passed away. She was there during the funeral, the whole thing, right? And here I am back in Colorado because I didn't want to deal with it. Not once did I think about that. When our mother passed away, the relationship was different because my sister had been taking care of my mother for a very long time. So when she passed away, I was there. And I didn't think about anything because I was like, hey, my job is done. I was here when she took her last breath. I'm going back to Colorado. Left my sister here to deal with everything. Well, not everything. I made sure that everything was taken care of before I took off. It wasn't until she vocalized how she felt about it, right? You know, and I was just like, oh, she was like, you left me. I'm the oldest. She was like, you left me. And I didn't know what. I stopped and I said, you know what? I won't ever leave you again. She goes, well, it doesn't really matter. Our parents are gone now. I said, yeah, but we're not.
Right.
She goes, I'm an orphan in the world. I said, yeah, we both are. I said, but now here's the next steps that we need to take. Are we going to let these moments define us and keep us apart? Or can we look at these moments, get caught up on our lives, and begin a new relationship with this reality that we now are in? And I tell you what, the best thing that ever happened, because it turned into, we now have the bond and the relationship that we had when we were younger, just on a different way. Because, you know, there's nothing, if my sister calls me up right now and say, hey, bro, I need this, I got you. Hey, I need you to come and be here with me. I'm on my way, right? And vice versa, right? If she calls me and says, hey, this is what's going on, now I'm the type of brother that be like, so what did you do? But we have that sense of honesty with us, right? And then we've sat on the phone, and you mentioned giving permission. I was so worried about what she was going to think about the way that I felt. And then in that moment, my younger sister became the big sibling. She
Mm.
goes, "You can cry if you want to. Ain't nobody gonna judge you. And if they do, we're gonna both jump on them." And so I did. And in that moment, I realized that this is what it was all about.
Mm.
And when it comes down to children, I'm still learning about that aspect of it. Children. One way that I've learned that they express their grief is through creativity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I didn't realize that. You give them some crayons, some pencils, some colored pencils, and maybe some Legos. They will sit up there and they will express themselves in a way to where maybe it won't make sense until it's done. Right? I know for us as adults, grief is very messy, and we have a hard time expressing it as adults. But I've watched children, and they've taught me so much about humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And right, right.
Me too. I had an experience with a 9-year-old boy that I write about in my book, The Little Black Funeral Dress, where I had gone to a school, grade 4 students, and I was sharing with them how they could be a hope hero, a caring grief companion to others who had any kind of loss. And I shared my experience about Jordan, and because Jordan had attended that school, these kids were really interested in the story. Now, after the class, all the students kind of ran out. There was some treats waiting for them, and most of them ran out to do that. But there was a few students that stayed behind who wanted to talk to me. And this one boy had waited an awful long time for his turn, and he was the last one. And I was admiring his patience to wait. But finally, he came up to me. And he just looks me in the eyes and says, "I am so sorry that your son died." Well, I was so taken aback by his sincerity, by his kindness. And I said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you for staying back and just telling me that. It really helps to know that you care." And then I thought he had more to say because his eyes were still locked onto mine. And no, there weren't any more words. It was like he just let that silence hang there to emphasize what he had already said. Now, with adults, we'd want to fill that empty space with more words. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble, right?
Very true.
But he just held my eyes with so much care that he never touched me, but I felt like I got the biggest bear hug ever. And I will never forget that 9-year-old boy. Empathy and compassion seemed to be woven in his heart. And I think if we can help cultivate that in other children, that they would look up and notice, to listen, acknowledge, to pray, and patiently be present. You cannot be a hope hero and a bully at the same time, because we've given children an aspirational goal is to be a hope hero, and they can do that simply and effectively by even like this boy who said, "I am so sorry your son died." That's it. Like, it's beautiful. I'll never forget it.
Like, and that's I mean, that wowed me, right? Because it makes me it brought up this thought that I had, because I'm always trying to explore how can I be better, right? And versatile, with anyone that I approach and that's going through this process of grief. And that what you just said right there, I was just like, wow, our children, when you factor in the innocence that they have, are they more in tune in this world to be comforters than the adults? Because that means that there's a lot of things that we can learn from the children because they're seeing life from a different perspective, right?
Yes.
And already they understand how to show up. They know how to keep, as they say, the word KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? Keep it simple. And what you just said right there was so simple, but yet
Mhm.
so deep.
Yes.
He just
Yeah.
left it right there. Like there's no more to be said.
Hmm.
That's,
Yeah. He didn't try to explain it away or tell me why it happened, or as adults sometimes do, they need to like, oh, here's why that happened probably, or you know, they
mm,
he just let that statement stay there and be
mm,
emphasized by the silence. We can't be scared by silence. It's very appropriate.
mm. You know, I have a thought about that. Most people who are afraid by silence is because they're afraid of being with themselves, because
Mm.
they spent a lot of their life. And I'm speaking from experience when I say this, so I'm not judging anyone. This is me putting myself out there. I was afraid of the silence because I was afraid of the reality that I had to face in that
Mm.
silence. Because when you're silent and there's nothing else going on, you're left with your own demise, right? Your own
Mm.
thoughts, your own actions, and idle hands are the devil's playground, right? So when you're sitting back by yourself, you tend to find, as a male with no outlet, nothing else going on, we can tend to take ourselves into a dark place. And sometimes
Mm.
that dark place can lead to a lot of other not so nice places up here, in here. And then it's manifested out into the world. So what people see is the addiction, the bad choices, um, the homelessness, and in a lot of cases, the suicides.
Mm.
So silence, if we can learn how to sit within that silence, the silence is also a truth, right? Because you are forced to sit with the reality. You are forced to sit with yourself. And it can go one or two ways. I chose the other side. Now the other side of it was in the silence, I learned who I was. I learned that I better start taking care of myself. I owe myself a little bit, not a little bit, but a lot of grace. And I owe it to myself to learn everything that has been given to me as a gift and no longer look at it as a curse, because if I look at it as a curse, I'm going to, find myself in a bad place. But if I
Mm.
look at it as a gift, I am more susceptible and open to learning and letting this information download, but also being more susceptible to the grace that is filling my presence. As long as I remain obedient to it, I
Mm.
know that Father is pleased with me. So, like a child, I'm still aiming to please my Father.
Yeah. And the special thing about that little boy too is that he was bearing witness to my pain in
Mm,
that silence,
yeah.
right? Just the presence. I think sometimes we underestimate the power of our presence with
Mm,
a grieving friend.
yeah.
We don't have to have there's no magic bullet words that you can offer. But just to say, I hurt with you and just sit in that with them is
Mm-hmm.
so powerful. And we underestimate it. And like we can do that, right? If we know that it's not on us to provide some phrase that's just going to magically make it all better again. There is no phrase, but our presence and just sitting there with them, holding that space is just powerful.
I love that. And Shirley, I want to say thank you. I knew this conversation was going to be wonderful and then some, and you bought it, man. You bought it. I love you coming in and being vulnerable and sharing your story, and educating, because you bought a lot of things that now I can put into my little toolbox and go, oh, that's me and Shirley was talking about that,
Mm.
and so it's helping me recognize and become a better version of what I need to be in this grief world, so I know how to show up even um, better
Mm.
for those who need us the most, right? So I definitely appreciate that. And I definitely appreciate you coming on the platform and sharing that with us today. And so before I let you go, how can people find you?
Yeah, I would encourage you to visit my website, shirleythiessen.com. On there, I have a free guide that you can download, just give you some ideas how to walk alongside your grieving friends.
Mhm.
And I'm on Instagram as CornerBend Shirley, Facebook, Shirley Thiessen, and also CornerBend. Yes, I am out there. So please reach out. You can buy my book, The Little Black Funeral Dress, on my website, shirleythiessen.com. So I invite you to reach out.
I'm definitely gonna have to get one of those books because I love reading, right? Especially from such an inspiring individual. Now, before I let you go, I always ask my guests this: if you can leave the audience with anything, what would you give them?
Hmm. Well, if you are grieving today, I want you to know that you are not alone. That if you don't have safe people in your inner circle who will help carry that burden of loss with you, please seek out others because they're out there. And so I don't want you to feel like you have to carry this all by yourself. You don't. And for those who are like the younger me, you're just uncertain how to support those who grieve, please pick up my book or listen to this podcast, listen to others, and gain some simple ideas that will give you confidence to know how to support those who grieve because your presence in their life is such a gift.
Wow, man. Now you did say that your daughter did a show. Um, let us know when that show airs so we can get more people to tune in to hear those thoughts from a sibling's point of view, right? And the things that she's experienced because I'm already knowing it's going to be so educational and the way that just from the way that we talked and the little insights that you've given me. So let us know when those things come out so we can put that out there as well. And I want everybody to that is tuned in. If you haven't already, do me a favor. If you find that this was a great conversation, you're looking for more, head over to their YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you get notified every time that we drop a new episode. And yes, we are doing it on some amazing platforms now. We got Twitch, Rumble, Instagram, X, a few other platforms. So if you missed it on any one of those, we got you good. We got you covered. We got you covered. And if you know anyone who could benefit from the conversations that we have, please, by all means, share it with them. And that way we can help them get the tools and the resources that they need to help go along their grieving process. Now, with that being said, I'm Tony Lynch. This is going to conclude another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And stay tuned. We have some other amazing things coming up, which if you follow me on any of these platforms, you'll see those things posted up there. Let me know what you guys think. Now, until next time, you guys keep your head up. We love you and thank you always for your support. Peace.